So what happens with Reiki is that it's the person's own energy that does the healing. It's not me that's doing the healing. We ask the universe or God or Buddha or Allah or whatever you want to call this wonderful being of all. We ask for the client's highest good to be received. And so the energy from the universe comes through us as the Reiki practitioner. And you can learn this with 1 day of training. And we send it to the client or the family or the friend or whoever this is. And it's the person's own body that does the healing. And it's really quite extraordinary. And it's what we're really doing is sharing love.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. This is episode 292. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Today I have a very special guest. She's an international public speaker, an award-winning author, a Reiki master teacher, occupational therapist, and so much more. I welcome to the show my friend, Miss Rebecca Austill Clausen. How are you today, Rebecca?
Eric, I am absolutely fantastic. It is such a blast to see you again. Like, way to go. And thank you for inviting me to be on your awesome show.
Oh my gosh. I like how you say awesome, my friend. We hear that authentic Boston accent, which you know I just love. It warms my heart. And actually, I want to start off with kind of letting the audience know how and where we met. And that will kind of lead us into all the myriad of amazing things that you do. This past summer in Phoenix, Arizona, I was a panelist and I was in the healing room at the International Association Near-Death Studies Conference, which Miss Rebecca is a huge part of. So share with the audience, what do you do with IAMs and how did you get connected with them?
Well, first of all, again, thank you, Eric. I love ions. And so what happened was I wrote a book and it's called Changemaker, How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. And it took me 20 years to have the courage to share the information because I learned how to talk with my brother. And I knew that from the afterlife. Yeah. I knew that ions would be a good market for this. And so the book came out in 2016, and it was in 2018 when I thought, I need to go to ions. And it always interfered with our Cape Cod, Massachusetts family vacation. And I thought, I need to miss that family vacation and go market my book at ions. And the very next day that I decided this, because I decided it before I went to sleep, the very next day, my very first email was from ions. And it said, submit a proposal to speak. And I'm like, oh, that's what I should do. I should submit a proposal to speak at ions about after-death communication. So I ended up getting accepted. And all sorts of synchronicities happened and all of that. And I enjoyed them immensely. And one of the president emeritus, Diana Corcoran, came to Philadelphia because I was living right outside of Philly at the time. Okay. And she was doing a promotion because ions was going to be in what's called King of Prussia, Pennsylvania the next day. And it was Delane Deal, who is the logistics master, and Diane Corcoran. And they said, so Becky, what are you going to do with ions? And I looked at them, and I'd only been to one conference. And I said, well, I don't know. What do you have? And one of the things they had that seemed very interesting to me was to be the ions healing coordinator. So I've been the ions healing coordinator since 2019. And that's when I had the pleasure to meet you. And so it's been really, really, really fun.
And you're not just the healing coordinator. You're like the healing mother, the healer, like aficionado, but because not only do you make everybody feel kind of not just comfortable, but well-adjusted, because, I got to be honest, even though it was in my hometown, right? I'm out here in Phoenix and Scottsdale. It was a little nerve-wracking trying to figure out, oh my God, I got to bring this and I'm doing this and I'm speaking and then I got to bring my computer and this and that. And you just made everything so streamlined and easy that it was just like 1, 2, 3, just sit down and do my thing. And so I thank you for that. But I love how just the whole organization, I haven't met everyone, but everyone I have met is just as nice as the next. And so I plan on being a member and a part of IAMS for a long time because,
Yay.
you know, one thing, and I'm sure you went through this too, but after having an NDE, Rebecca, you know, you may not know where to turn and you're learning and you're integrating. But for me, I felt like, you know, it was around the 3rd year anniversary for me. And I felt like I had finally kind of landed this new version of myself at home with IAMS. And that's a huge statement to say that because, you know, it's a lot. And, you know, for what I went through was a lot. And, you know, I just thank you and everyone that I've met, you know, from Kimberly to Betty Gondano, Kimberly Braun, like just everybody that I've worked with and met and connected with, and my 2 Kathys on my panel. It was just so awesome. So take us back. What happened with your brother and how did you start to see him and other family members as well?
It was an amazing experience that I was not at all prepared for, really. I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm, and it was 6 weeks after my brother David had passed. And David died of AIDS, and it was in 1995 when thousands and thousands of people were passing. And
Yeah.
David had come out that he was gay in his early 20s. My family was very accepting of this, and it was very hard. David was 4 years younger than I, and I couldn't believe he passed. It made no sense to me whatsoever. He was 35 years old, and I couldn't understand why he passed. Actually, I think he was 37. That would make sense. He was 37 years old. Made no sense to me at all. My heart was closed, filled with grief. 6 weeks after he passed, I decided to go horseback riding. And it was a beautiful day. It was mid-November. David passed on October 1st, 10/1. It was a beautiful day, and my heart opened up just a little bit. And we had our first frost. And so we had icicles hanging from the trees, and we had frost and beautiful rainbows sparkling all around. And I said, "Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." I closed my eyes. I was not psychic. I was not spiritual, but there was my brother. And he was in human form. He was wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. I had never, ever, ever, ever done, thought, heard anything like this, but here's my brother. And the scene was luminescent, filled with love. And I started to talk with him. And I realized I could just send thought. And he was great, and I was great. And I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole. They were holding hands like they always did. They had passed about 10 years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's Grandma and Grandpa. Beside them was Edward, a childhood family friend who had passed about 6 months ago. Beside Edward was Holly, a friend of mine who had passed, gosh, when she was in her 20s from a vehicle accident. I used to play the church organ, and I played a lot for funerals. And behind all these wonderful folks were at least 2 dozen, 3 dozen people that I had played at their funerals. And I thought, holy mackerel, it was unbelievable. I looked back at David, and I saw that there was a golden arch behind David, and because my brother's name is David.
Yeah.
And I had read some books about the afterlife. When I heard that David had AIDS, I somehow found myself in the New Age section of a bookstore, which I didn't even know what New Age was at the time. I'm a traditional science-based occupational therapist, but I started to read about the afterlife a lot. But I didn't know, I didn't know. But I had read that if you see a doorway and you feel comfortable, to go through it. So I looked to David to see if he was going to take me through this golden colored arch. And Instead, my 4'10" grandmother takes me by the hand and we skip through this arch. And on the other side of the arch was a fuchsia colored land. Now, my husband Jeff and I have two sons, and they're now 38 and 36. And they both say, Mom, don't say fuchsia. And I'm like, why not? Because as you can imagine, they've heard this story a few times. They said, it sounds like you're tripping, sounds like you're high, sounds like you're loaded. I wasn't any of those. And it was fuchsia. And I heard my dad's dad, Gramps. I heard Gramps, who had passed about 15 years ago. I didn't see him. I had seen these other folks.
Okay.
With Gramps, I heard him, and he says, get over here. And he takes me by the hand, and we literally fly through this fuchsia colored land for what seemed like hours. And it was incredible. And all of a sudden, my horse starts to move. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I said to Gramps, I need to go back. And so we did this U-turn in this fuchsia colored land. He takes me right to the golden colored arch. I fly through the arch. The horse is moving. There's David, my grandparents, Edward, Holly, all these other dozens of people. And they're all there in the same place. And my horse is moving. And I said, I need to go back. And you know what they all said at the exact same time?
What?
We will always be here.
Ah.
We will always be here. And I pulled up the reins and I sat on the horse for a long time and thought, what just happened to me?
Okay, wait. This is blowing me away. And there's so many things that I really want to connect here because, okay, Miss Rebecca is the amazing Pisces sun, but she's on the magical cusp of rebirth, the Pisces Aries cusp. So that's important. She's in Aries rising, so that sun is on the 12th house and the Libra moon in the 7th. Now, as you're describing this, when you had these visuals and this like transcendental and spiritual experience, you were on the horse the whole time, correct?
Yes.
And and I'm sure you know this if you didn't at the time, horses are very spiritual animals.
Yes.
And I grew up riding horses on Martha's Vineyard and Oak Bluffs and competitions. And horses are just so majestic, but they, help with healing with special needs kids, all types of stuff. So I'm not surprised that this happened when you were on a horse, and you having Uranus in the 4th house, that would connect you not just through the mother's lineage, but just your emotional mind, that you would have these visions and downloads and sort of these experiences. And when you were just an occupational therapist, you had no concept of like real, I guess, more spirituality. You were just born and raised Catholic, correct?
No, I wasn't Catholic. I was Episcopalian.
Oh, Episcopalian.
But I was raised in a religious environment.
Right. But none of this spiritual woohoo
No.
stuff. Like you had a matrix job, you were all plugged in, doing your thing.
Yes.
And then, okay, so then when you returned after this, what did you say to your husband?
Oh,
what did he say to you when you told him?
Thank goodness my husband accepted it. It was very interesting because what happened was I actually went back to work, and I work all the time, and I'm like, okay, I'm going back to work. But that night I went into the library and I didn't even know what to look for. And I'm like, I need to figure this thing out, and couldn't find an answer and all of that jazz. So when I told my husband, what happened though, actually, is I asked for a teacher. And I am not the person really that asks too much. I usually make my own way, but I asked for a teacher. And so when I was telling my husband about this experience, he told me that he had been meditating since the 10th grade. And so he was calm about all of this, and he was accepting. Thank goodness.
That's awesome, though. Wow, he was meditating since the 10th grade?
He was, and he's good. He's a good meditator.
Didn't you marry the right guy? That's oh my God. Well, and so that's so fascinating because like having that Pisces sun in the 12th house, it would connect you. And this is what I'm really curious about. So that happens. When do we go on the adventures of the Reiki master And when did you start to kind of realize that you have these spiritual gifts?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. It is so interesting talking with you. Um, so David passed October 1st, 1995. I asked for a teacher, and a friend of mine, Dr. Amy Carroll, she's an occupational therapist. She was on my staff at the time because I had a very rapidly growing business. And Amy came in and she said, "How are you doing?" She knew, of course, that David had passed, and I did not share any of this with her. And I said, "Well, it's pretty rough." And she said, "I met someone that I think you'd like." And I'm like, "Who's that?" And she said, "She's a shaman." And I sort of knew what a shaman was, but I wasn't sure. And I said, "Well, what's a shaman?" And she said, "Well, I'm not totally sure, but I believe that they feel that everything natural in life has energy." And she talks with people that have passed on. Like,
Mm,
no kidding. So I ended up, meeting this wonderful woman. Her name's Nancy Iriel, and she lived about an hour from where I lived, and she has since passed. But she used Reiki to bring me on what is called shamanic journeys.
yeah.
And so a friend of mine, Dr. Michael Peasy, who was an occupational therapist, a couple months later, so I'd only been with Nancy for a couple of months, was offering a state-of-the-art holistic workshop where they had an occupational therapist teaching Reiki. And I keep saying OT because for me it was validating, because I
Yeah.
knew I was getting a little far out. This is 1996. Things
Yeah.
weren't as acceptable as they are now.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was an OT that was teaching Reiki, well, of course, I went there, had a blast, learned Reiki 1, learned Reiki 2, 10 years later became a Reiki master after I fully accepted all of that.
Wow.
And it's been a blast.
So, okay, and that's what's so fascinating because, you know, when I looked at your chart, and for me, I'm a Scorpio rising. So when I meet people, it's almost like I've got a MRI machine. So
Wow.
I can feel people's energies, and so it's like immediately I know kind of like their heart and soul, good, bad, and different, whatever. And not just through our conversations through the phone, but then when I met you in person, I was just like, wow. I felt like your aura, this spiritual powerhouse and this energy. And so I'm trying to find out, when you worked with the shaman, did you continue to see your brother and your family members that had passed on? And then would this start to come online when you practice more of the Reiki, where you may see people that strangers?
Yes. Not only did I continue have I continued to communicate with my brother. My parents have now passed. A lot of relatives. It's almost like a natural instinct for me to do this. But a cool thing that happened, Eric,
Yeah.
was I go to the American Occupational Therapy annual conference, and I was pretty involved administratively with what was happening, and I had no filter. And so I started to share some of this. It was not good, but that's what happened. And I met at the very last day, I met a nun. I thought, now, wouldn't it be interesting to sit beside a nun and find out what she thinks about all of this? And she said within 5 minutes, "I went to a workshop last weekend where I learned automatic writing." And I'm like, "What's that?" And she said, "Automatic writing is when you're in meditation and all of a sudden if you're journaling, you're in meditation and you're writing, all of a sudden your hand starts to move of its own volition and you're receiving a message from one of the spirits." I'm like, "You're kidding." So it turned out that was the last day of conference. The next day I went to ride my horse and went home, and I was meditating a lot by that point, because this was about 4 months into being with Nancy and learning shamanic work. And
Right.
I think I had already done Reiki at that point. But anyway, so I'm journaling my meditative experiences in my car, getting ready to go back to work. But anyway, all of a sudden my hand starts to move across the page, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" I can either freak out or I can just let it go. And so I did. I said, "Who are you?" And it was
Mm,
this person or spirit was male for me. And he said, "I am love." And at that point, I didn't understand the magnificent power of love. Like, I thought love was
wow.
between, people. I didn't know that there could be a bigger capacity for love. And I'm like, love, question mark. And I write this, love, question mark. And he writes, my name is Lot, L-O-T. And Lot came to me for quite a long time. And there's a whole long story about that. But bottom line is that after he came for about 5 to 6 days, he was down. I was downloading so much information. I was shaking my hand because I was writing so rapidly. And Lot writes, he says, why don't you use your computer to record these, to take these messages? And I'm like, my computer? Because to me, it seemed like what he was doing was ancient and the computer was new. And I'm like, you kidding? And he says, yes, you're a very good typist, which I was. And he says, yeah, why don't you go get your computer? So I was home at the time. I went downstairs, brought it was a pretty big computer because this is 1996.
I know. We had those huge computers.
It was. And I sat there, hands in ready position, closed my eyes, and Lot came, and so did multiple other spirits come. And so I still do that to this day. And I must have 4,000 pages of beautiful, loving information.
Okay, so is this Lot, like Lot from the Bible?
I didn't know there was even a connection of Lot from the Bible. So for me, it wasn't a religious type of figure, but I do realize that there was a Lot in the Bible. Lot for me was a very high spiritual, massive, beautiful energy that shared love.
And so that's fascinating, taking it from the writing to the typing. So when you were typing, did you know what, like, you know how like we have our hands on the keyboard and your brain is telling you what to type? For you, was it like a different process from how you normally type?
Oh, sure. Because the way I normally type, I know what I'm going to write. This, I would take a couple of deep breaths, clear my mind.
Okay.
And then I would just wait. So I'd clear my mind. And sometimes when I do this, because I do this to this day, I'll journal. Like I'll just say, this is happening, blah, 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 normal typing. And then I get that all out of my mind so that my mind is clear. And then I take a couple of deep breaths, close my eyes, hands in ready position, and I just wait. And within like half a second, the information comes, and then I just type it.
That is so fascinating. So let me ask you this. Do you think that some of these spiritual gifts were coming through your DNA, like mom and dad, any inclination, or through your mother's lineage, like a grandma, great grandma, anybody that you're aware of?
A friend of mine, Bernadette Thompson, does a lot with ancestral healing. And you may have met Bernadette because she was a healing practitioner at the Last Science Conference, and she does a lot with ancestral healing. For me, I have not gone down that path, but I think that it's highly likely. And Bernadette's a great person to help people check their ancestry.
I see. I have a sense. You have that Uranus in the South Node in the 4th house in Cancer, and I would have to say, looking at the natal birth chart, that it is through mom and that lineage, and that whether you knew if mom had gifts like this or not, maybe she never told you, it was a different time. But if she didn't, I bet her mother did. It's somewhere in there.
That's amazing. Well, grandma and grandpa, those are my mother's parents. They were the ones that were right there, and they come right here.
That's what I'm thinking.
Interesting.
That is. So now this will really throw it out for a monkey wrench. Was your mother or grandma and grandpa, either one of them, a Cancer sun sign?
I have no idea, but I bet, because Eric, you are so good at this. Most likely they were.
So that would be like from June 21st, 22nd to like July 20th in terms of their birthdays.
Well, could be. I don't know.
All
Could
right.
be.
So, it's just a thought. So now this is fascinating though, because you're going along, you have this occupational therapy business, you study with the shaman, the Reiki master, but then take us to the book. And how did you, what made you write the book? Was it just constantly connecting to your brother? And then how did the book even change your spiritual path as well?
Thanks for asking. It took me 20 years to have the courage to share what you and I are talking about, because I'm a science-based occupational therapist, and I had no idea that there was an afterlife, that we could communicate, that life is eternal. I had none. No, I had no idea. But I kept receiving these validations, and the book covers the first year after my brother passed. It starts in October, and every chapter is a month, and it was fantastic. That first year was incredible. It took me 20 years of being a businesswoman, growing my business, and then I turned 60. And at 60, we had, gosh, the company had about 350 staff. We had 350 occupational therapy,
Wow.
physical therapy, and speech therapy practitioners. And I have quite a bit of a drive, as you can probably figure, with the fair amount of energy. And we had serviced about 100,000 clients.
Wow.
And so, that had happened, and I had done all that. And I had said to my chief financial officer, Bob DeShulo, who just is fantastic. And I said, Bob, my soul is crying out for me to publish a book about what happened. And he said, Becky, would you like to sell your business? And we had talked about me selling. I'd had it for 32 years.
Yeah.
We had talked about me selling. And I mean, he's my CFO, so we both knew the price. And I'm like, well, yeah, I was thinking I might like to do that, because quite frankly, this was 1995. Or no. David passed in 95. This was 2015. Sorry, it was 2015. Yeah. And so still there was the information that I wanted to share was not necessarily as accepted as it is now.
Right.
And so I didn't want to put my business or any of these 350 staff, I didn't want to put their professional career at risk by having somebody say, you work with Becky Austill Clausen and she talks to dead people? Well, that is not accessible. We can't have that. I didn't want that to happen.
Right.
So I wanted to sell it. And Bob says, well, I'd be very glad to stay here if you think I could do it. And of course he could do it. Wow. We'd worked together for 22 years. And so within moments, he became president and I became CEO. We used the same lawyer because that's how well we trusted each other.
Oh,
we knew each other. We already knew the price. And I got the book published, professionally edited, published by She Writes Press. And I, quite frankly, it was published September 13th, 2016. I was waiting for the American OT Association to call me up and say, Becky, you have lost your mind and you can't belong here anymore. But that didn't happen. And in February, March, my husband Jeff and I were visiting all the national parks. We're in Hoh Rainforest in the United States.
Okay.
Olympic National Park in Washington. It was totally awesome. And I looked at my phone and it said, congratulations. Changemaker has just won 3 National Book Awards. Can you please come to the Book Expo of America in New York City and pick them up? And I'm like, holy mackerel. And it wasn't ego. It wasn't an ego thing. It was like after death communication is hitting the mainstream.
Yeah.
And I went to go pick up my illustrator, Mickey McAllister, and we went to New York and we had our few moments of fame. And it eventually won 2 more National Book Awards. And it's been so fun to share what happened. And when I wrote this book, there's an OT part in it. At the end of every chapter is what's called an illumination. And that's where I say, so what do you think? And would you like to have a replication of what happened with me? And there are 235 references in the back of the book, because I thought if people think I have lost my mind, at least they know I'm a well-read imbecile. And this
oh my God,
well received. It's been really fun.
See, I think that your leap of faith and the need for you to share your honest truth, that's always going to resonate because you were being your true, authentic self, vibrating from your heart chakra.
Yes.
And this was kind of like would you say that it was kind of like your honoring your brother and
Yes.
your relationship and the healing and the love?
and the fact that love is eternal.
Yeah.
Love is the common denominator between life here on earth and life beyond. And Ions has that same concept, because people that have had a near-death experience, most of them experience that love. 80% of people that have had near-death experiences have after-death communication experiences. And so it validates the fact that life and consciousness remains after our body dies.
It is so true. And, I hear different things, like it may take 7 years for all your, after your NDE, for all your gifts to come online and different things. And, I'm at year 3, headed towards year 4, but I've already experienced a lot of different things. But one thing that's really amazing, while I was in coma, unfortunately, I lost my mother, but she has since come to me multiple times in dreams.
Awesome.
And I feel her presence all the time. And so you experienced that with your brother, but when you lost your mother, how long did it take for her to come and kind of talk to you and visit you?
Good question. Mom did not allow me to give her Reiki. She had pain for 13 years, and Reiki is definitely used to reduce pain.
Oh, it's
And
beautiful.
so, the last week before she passed, she said, "Hey, Beck, what's that thing you do?" And I'm like, "You mean Reiki?" She says, "Yeah." She says, "Will you try that on me?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so I gave her a really loving Reiki session, because it's natural energy healing. It's really her body that's doing it.
Yes.
And we finished, and she said, "Oh, that felt good. You can do it anytime." I'm like, "Oh, I wish I could have done that when she was in pain." But anyway, she passed. I heard immediately from her. Immediately, she said, "Thank you." And then I heard nothing for 6 months. And
Mhm.
I didn't want to overstep my bounds by communicating with her until she wanted to communicate with me.
Okay.
She used to do a lot of puzzles, and my husband Jeff was doing a puzzle. And so this is 6 months after she passed. And so Jeff says, "Hey, Beck, look at this puzzle." So I came over, and all of a sudden I hear Mom in my head. And she says, "The piece goes right there." And I'm like, "Oh, Mom, how are you doing?" And she's very focused. She goes, "The piece goes right there." And we tried it. It didn't exactly go there, but from then on, Mom has been very present. And a lot of times, Mom comes as a bird. And a
Mm.
lot of times, 80% of people that communicate with us, because I teach after-death communication,
Okay.
figured if I can learn it, other people can learn this. Well, anyway, 80% of our after-death communication comes through dreams. So when you said that
Yeah.
you dream, that's where 80% of this is. A lot of our loved ones will communicate with us with something that reminds us of them. For example, Mom loved birds. And so when
Mm.
there's a bird that comes right up to you and maybe stares at you like very unbird-like, or stands in your presence
Yes.
like 5 or 10 minutes, that's something unusual. And so I'll think, "Who are you?" And Mom almost always comes as a robin, but she now is starting to come with other different kinds of birds. But it's so fun. It's so fun to just say, "Hi, Mom," and, send love, to send love. And so I'm sharing love, she's sharing love, and it makes us feel good.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to share this again at the end, but I want you to share now with the audience so they can tune in and check with you. Everything's down below in the description. But in terms of your Reiki Master teaching and helping people to connect to the other side and your different services, share all your information in terms of how people can connect and book with you and just learn from you.
Sure. So I am retiring, and I'm retiring this April 2025.
Oh my
And
God.
so I've got my 3 Reiki classes that I'm teaching for the final time, but you can always reach me. You can always reach me by email is the best, and it's Becky@RebeccaAustillClausen.com. And I do apologize for the long name, but that's what it is. But it's I'm teaching Reiki 1,
Okay.
which is where you get what's called attuned. You get the Reiki energy placed in your aura, and you can
Yeah.
learn Reiki in 1 day. I teach it in 1 day.
Wow.
And So I'm doing this for the 9th time at the American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference, and it's in Philly, and
That's
it's on
incredible.
April 2nd. Yep, April 2nd. And so you can go to aota.org, and if you put in Reiki, you'll essentially you'll find it, or just send me an email.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
one is on April 2nd, 2025, Reiki 2, which is where you learn long distance communication and
Mm,
why and how Reiki works. That's on Thursday, April 3rd, and on March 15th, for those that have already received training in Reiki, I'm teaching a Reiki master course, and that's online. And so that's happening on March 15th. You have to have at least 6 months experience, I say. You have
okay.
to have at least 6 months experience to
But people could still sign up for that. That's great. Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. Yeah, it's going to be my final Reiki masterclass, and
Aw.
Reiki is fantastic. It really can bring you joy. It's called unconditional love.
Yeah.
Reiki is unconditional love, and you can learn how to help yourself heal, help your family, friends, clients, animals, even plants heal. And it's not me that's the practitioner that's healing. We
Uh-huh.
ask for a client's highest good. And
Yes.
we ask the universe, whatever you want to call it, universe, God, Buddha, Allah, whatever, this wonderful being of all, we ask for the client's highest good to be received. And so the energy from the universe comes through us as the Reiki practitioner, and you can learn this with 1 day of training. And we send it to the client or the family or the friend or whoever this is, and it's the person's own body that does the healing. And it's really quite extraordinary. And it's what we're really doing is sharing love.
I love that. And I've experienced Reiki healing. But for you, when you're doing it, do you experience where your hands or fingertips are warming up or getting hotter?
Yes.
Really? Okay. Wow.
Yes. And a lot of times, Eric, what Reiki does is it raises our vibrational energy,
Yeah.
and therefore it puts us in a connection with the spirits that live around us,
Yeah.
particularly our loved ones that live beyond. And so often there is a communication with either the person that you're sending the healing to, their loved ones, or other loved ones that would like to have and send a message to this person who's receiving Reiki. And it's always interesting to say, did you by any chance have a person that's passed recently, or have a mother that's passed, or whatever? And you sort of try to feel out if the person would be comfortable knowing that that person is now here. And I'd say close to 100% of the time, I don't even remember anyone that said no.
Yeah.
And you just say, well, they're right here and they're sending me love. And
Wow.
it's so nice, or whatever the message is, because a lot of times you can get a specific message, but Reiki facilitates that as well.
So I love this, and especially how you connected back with, the OT organizations and groups, and I think you may remember this, but I taught multiply severely disabled
Oh,
children in the Bronx for
right.
10 years. So I worked hand in hand with OT, PT, speech, and
Uh-huh.
obviously because I also had blind children, mobility. So for me, I know that some of the therapists could be a little closed off from that. So I think that you were the right vessel and had the right heart to champion, to get the organizations and to get therapists more open to it. And I think it's so beautiful, and it's such a Pisces way. My wife's a Pisces, so you
Oh,
Pisces people are magical. And I don't know if you're aware that Pisces, Virgo, right, the sister signs, the opposites, which I'm the Virgo, we are on the healing axis, right? Virgo is more of like the human body and of service to humanity in the physical realm. And Pisces is the pure agape Christ-like love, compassion, empathy, and the healing more in the mental and spiritual realms.
wow.
So I think it's just so fitting, not only for us to connect, but just in terms of your in particular gifts, it's so perfect. So now this is what's so fascinating to me, though. Um, Share with us the public speaking, the international public speaking. I'm sure this all came about through the book and IAMS, but where has it gone? Where has it taken you? And are there places where people can find you coming up this year or anything?
Well, I hope they listen to this wonderful podcast with
Yeah.
you because you are awesome. You know, I was talking to a service technician this morning, and I shared about you, and he's like, "Oh, definitely tell me where I can get this podcast." So, Eric, you're facilitating lots of wisdom. It's really very, very fun.
Thank you.
I I've been speaking my whole entire life,
Yeah.
and actually, that's one of the reasons why I still have this Boston accent because I was in New Mexico. I was about 22 years old, and I was getting ready to do some work with special ed teachers. It was about 200 or 300 teachers there, and I'm 22. And my boss says, "How are you doing?" And I was going to do this presentation, and I said, "Well, I'm a little nervous." And he says, "Why are you nervous? They're not going to listen to you anyway." And I'm like, "They're not." And he says, "No, they're going to listen to your accent." And I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." So it's been sort of a conscious decision not to lose the accent, even though I haven't lived in Boston. But we do go camping at Cape Cod every single summer. But anyway, I've traveled the country,
Yeah.
speaking at universities, national conferences, state conferences, was over in Ireland and England, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
just been a blast. Not necessarily for spiritual reasons for those.
Okay.
I was connecting with spiritual folks, and then when you present at IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, it's international, so it goes
Yeah.
around the whole world, and it's just been magical.
So give us some insight, and maybe some insight even to someone like me. How do you communicate or guide or help people like myself who have had not just an NDE, that as well, I'm curious about, but mine was a little bit more on the darker side,
Mm.
experiencing spiritual warfare, battling with Satan, and just a lot of darkness, and, coming up out of it where, I literally thought between the hospital and my wife, they were all trying to kill me. Then I awakened, and, then to find out that I lost my mother, which you can only imagine. It
So
was not easy. I took care of her over 20 years.
wow.
So what type of insight do you have with people who are still kind of new and integrating, and or maybe had a challenging NDE experience? Because when I see so many people, oh, it's love and light, and Jesus held my hand, and this one kissed me, and the flowers and the golden, and I'm like, oof, I wish I saw that.
Well, first of all, Eric, I'm very sorry to hear about your mom. It's very hard, and please know that I'm sending you lots of love and support, as you move forward. There's a whole philosophy that we come onto this earth to achieve and fast track our purpose.
Yes.
Because if we live forever, which is what I fully 100% believe, we live forever,
Oh yeah.
then we decided that we wanted to come to Earth. And Earth is a way that we can speed up our purpose and speed up our evolution.
Earth school is pretty intense.
Earth school is intense. And for those that have had more of the distressing NDEs or more of the challenges in life, I think it's a time for us to acknowledge that and to open our heart, to spend some time in nature if you can. Nature is extremely healing.
Every day.
Every day, and maybe go up to some trees and share their love. Trees are very good, or the ocean, or whatever. But
Yeah.
spending time in nature and allowing yourself to try your hardest to accept what's happened and move forward. Why now? Why? What can I learn from that? What am I thinking that has allowed me to have such an incredibly intense experience? What can I do? How can I process this? Do I need to talk to other people? There's lots of support groups within IANS for distressing NDEs or for non-distressing NDEs. But bottom line is to share love with yourself. To share that love with you, because you are the most important person on this earth. And we think, oh, no, we need to help others and give and all of that. But bottom line, if we can be healed and help ourselves heal, then we can help others.
Yeah.
But we are the most important. And so by sharing love, and not in a judgmental way, but accepting who we are,
Yeah.
and trying our best to move forward with or without support, hopefully with some support, then I think that can be a very helpful message.
That is so beautiful. And you're so right, because I tell you, this whole journey, because for some people, the NDE is the awakening. I was already awakened, and it was just a challenge. But what I've come to learn, we have our soul contracts, that
Yes.
I had chosen this. So I was built for it. And with my higher self and spirit guides and Archangel Raphael and guardian angels and my mother, everybody on the other, I had a whole team looking out for me.
Yes.
And even though, I went through a lot of challenges, I was able to pull through and make it and thrive. Even my pulmonologist, physical therapist, was like, Eric, you are healing faster and better than anybody that I've had who had been in coma or had experienced, COVID the way that I did. And she was just like, it's incredible. And I was like, thank you. And sometimes, I realize about all of that stuff, but there is something, and I want to know where you have seen this in your experiences. There is something within each one of us in terms of our self-love, which I had healed and worked on for years, but also our will.
Yeah.
I've known Rebecca, I mean, for real, Rebecca, since I was 6 years old. My father was murdered when I was 6, and I have known, I was like, I'm here for 3 digits. I'm not going anywhere. And so even when I was sick in the hospital, and I was really sick before I fell into coma on September 6th, and I went in August 29th, I only thought positive thought. I was like, I'll be fine. I'm sick. I'm really sick. I'm going to be fine. But, that's the thing. So where have you seen this in the years with IAMS and in your own experience with your brother and your heightened spiritual gifts, that combination of the love, but also the human will?
Good question. And I'm so sorry about your dad. Gosh, you have
Oh,
done
my life's been a movie. Don't worry about me.
it has
I'm
been
fine.
a movie. You have done so much with what you've been given. I'm like, holy mackerel, Eric.
You got to make it work, baby.
You do need to make it work. And that's the trick right there. And I don't mean trick in a bad way. I mean, that's the key. We need to make it work. I truly believe we are not given more than we can handle.
Yes.
And knowing that we have, each one of us has the ability to support and assist ourselves. We can do this. We can do this. And finding additional support, or knowing that you can succeed. You can succeed, I think, can really, really help us. And look what's happened with you, Eric. It's really been so amazing to receive the validation. That's the validation that life continues forever.
And it does, because that's the thing. So this is powerful when you're saying this, because these aren't just words that Rebecca's saying, you guys. Like, that is exactly what I came to understand while in coma, because in my 40-day coma stint, I died 3 times. But after the first time, and then I came back, I was like, and I knew this conceptually, right? I was like, born again Christian, and I love Jesus, Lord and Savior, all this stuff. But we have eternal life. The soul continues on. And I think now, as I connect with it deeper, because I've always had these visions and dreams when I was sleeping, but you realize that in some ways, and I know a lot of indigenous and ancient cultures felt like when we are awake here, it's like we're really sleeping. And when we're sleeping, it's like when we're really back home in the spiritual realm and we're really awake. You know what I mean? So I really think about that, because when you see, just like you saw, your ancestors on the other side, it doesn't seem like it's nothing but like they are really them, and it's real. And
It is real.
that's
It's
powerful.
It is very powerful. And just even from a scientific viewpoint, John Hopkins Medical University, John Hopkins Press, did a whole journal on near-death experiences. They are now considered a valid medical event. And you
Good.
can get free videos, free information if you're a medical professional. How do you deal with people that have had a NDE, and really supporting that whole concept? It's called the Medical Gap of Kea, and it's on the iands.org. Yellow.
You back?
Yep. And so so you can get this information from John Hopkins Medical University Press, and it's on the IANS website,
Yeah.
and it's called Medical Gap of Kea.
Oh, and IAMS is such a wealth of insight and knowledge, and I'm looking forward. I think I'm going to try. I've been so busy, but I'm going to try to make it to the distressing group in February. I know they meet once a month, I believe, but
Online.
yeah, that's something that is important. And you guys should explore the IAMS website and learn more about this amazing organization that Rebecca's a part of. So now you said you're retiring, but you're not leaving IAMS, I hope.
I am not.
Okay.
It's I'm just retiring from like the day-to-day work type of activities. Oh no, I'm definitely going to continue with lots of different things, and I'm having a blast.
I love it. So now, in terms of the Reiki with your family, has your husband and your two sons, have they been ever like, "Hey, babe," or "Hey, mom, can you do some Reiki on me?"
As a matter of fact, there's a good little story on that. Our oldest son, Kenny, um, is pretty spiritual, but he's not gone down that path.
Okay.
Um, but when he was about, gosh, when I was learning Reiki, he was about maybe 7 or 8 years old. And I got my massage table, my Reiki table, and he says, "Hey, mom, will you give me Reiki?" And so normally when people have Reiki, they keep their eyes closed. He's lying on his back and his eyes are wide open, and he's looking at something on the ceiling. And so I was watching him, and I'm like, I finally said, "Kenny, what are you looking at?" He says, "Uncle David." That's my brother. I'm looking at Uncle David. And I'm like, "Really? What's he doing?" He says, "He's doing somersaults on the ceiling." I'm like, "You're kidding." And I said, "Well, tell him I said hello." He goes, "Mom, he already knows."
Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, that's the stuff I love. And people don't get it. But, with children, the
He knows.
first 7, 8 years, right? That's that kind of Aries energy, the childhood genius. They are still in between the worlds. They're still sort of in that theta, beta, delta, gamma, they're still there. And I don't know if you're aware that that's why in certain European countries, I think it's Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, they do not send their children to school until they're like 7. We're over here in America, we're like throwing them to the wolves by like 1, 2 years old for this care and this early and we got to get them to Harvard and Ivy League and it's too much because the school system, even if you're going to a private or a public, whatever school, you're taking away the children's natural creative gifts, imagination, and genius. And
Yes.
your son, that's an example of that. And I see it with my twin boys who are now 11. But, and I don't know if you have grandchildren or not, but anybody around these kids that are like 12 and under, these Neptune Pisces babies, they are pure magic. When they tell you they see spirits on the other side, please believe them.
Yes.
Please listen,
Yes.
because I've seen. So when I was in coma, I astral traveled to my house and I saw one of my twins, and he saw me.
Wow.
And then he's the same kid who a bird flew into the window and his wing was all damaged and broken. He picked him up, and then he got like this electrical shock, and then the bird's wing was healed, and then the bird flew off. And so these are the types of things that you can see from these young people, and even they're the alpha generation, and then now I guess the new ones coming in with Pluto Aquarius this year. These are the betas. they are coming in on a whole nother frequency.
Agreed.
So, with all that, and we know what's going on in the world now, we know that we're switching ages, which can be kind of bumpy and wonky, from the Piscean age to the age of Aquarius, where we're getting the truth and revelation. What type of things do you feel can really help people who are still kind of teeter-tottering, kind of still kind of plugged into the matrix, but they're starting to hear these new words and these concepts, and they're getting tingles, or they're seeing angel numbers? What insights or what guidance can you give people who may still go through their spiritual awakening in 2025 and beyond?
Eric, you are a great interviewer. This is so fun talking with you. The big advice that I have is to believe.
Yeah.
Is to believe that we really are eternal beings, that what you're seeing and thinking, maybe I'm just imagining this. You don't have to think that. Just believe whatever you're feeling, particularly, of course, if it's in a positive direction. For some reason, we're being shown this information so that we can evolve and we can grow. And surround yourself with love. If you can, surround yourself with love. And nature, I keep coming back to nature, is so healing. It's a wonderful way. If you live in the city, go out to a park. If you live outside the city, definitely go out into the woods or the ocean. It's so healing. It can help us connect to ourselves, but believe it, and believe in the essence of you, because you are awesome.
Oh, that's such a great message. So, okay, so the veil is super thin right now. We've got all the governments admitting to aliens and UAPs and this and that. I know that a lot of people who have had NDEs sometimes meet or experience connections with UFOs or our galactic family and brothers and sisters. So, one, have you ever had any of those experiences? And two, what message of hope, and as I say, faith over fear, because some people are getting in these lower chakra energies of fear, and that's not what's going to serve us at this time. So share those two aspects with the collective, and that message of hope that there's nothing to fear, correct?
Sure. Fear is a very low energy, and it does not have to occur. If I get into a situation where I'm fearful, I try very hard to immediately leave the situation. If I'm thinking about something that makes me scared, I don't continue with it.
Yeah.
People say I get scared, and I'm like, well, do you watch scary movies? Yes, I do. Well, I encourage you not to watch them, because it helps us be afraid. I don't want to be afraid. I like to share love. So I think we need to surround ourselves with a loving environment, not a fearful environment. And if somebody or something comes towards you, or you feel something bad, send it away. Absolutely. If you don't want it, send it away. And you can send it away. Just do not let it come towards you. Do not let it come near you. Just say, I don't want you around here. Because we have free will on this earth, and the spirits and the energy will listen to us. And you don't have to doubt yourself. Just say, no, go away. And then do not allow them to come. And that, it really does help. And it really does work. And just be clear and firm if you don't want that. But if you can surround yourself with happiness, it really does help facilitate your continued happiness.
I love that. Now, what about our galactic friends?
Oh, yes, I absolutely believe the galactic friends are around. I've had not a lot, but I've had a multitude of experiences. But quite frankly, the group that I really love are the nature spirits, the fairies. I love them, and they come to us with joy and love. And it's I write about them in my book, and people will. I've had very good comments on the book, and people will say, Beck, I get your book, Changemaker, How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life, But the fairy part, I wasn't really sure. But the fairies for me are very, very present. And they're just in another realm, just like the galactic folks are in another realm. And there's multitudes of realms that are around us, and we can access them pretty much anytime we want.
I love that. See, and I think what is so perfect, it's like the way that you can blend kind of the 3D with the 5D,
Mhm.
it makes it more palatable and accessible and comprehensible for people because they can see like, well, this woman, she was an occupational therapist and she's this and even the accent lends to it. So it's like you're bringing authenticity to these spiritual experiences so that people can be more open or more prone to receiving these type of powerful messages. So I thank you for that and the way that you do it and the work because that's what's needed, right? People need to know that this isn't spiritual woohoo talk. Even science is catching up to spirituality, right?
They are. It's very fun to see. Very fun. Speaking of that, there's these awards called the Bigelow Awards, and
Mm,
they're called Bigelow Essay Awards. You
yeah.
probably have
Yeah.
heard of them.
Yeah.
But Robert Bigelow in I think let's say this 2000, I think it was like 2021, said that he'd pay $1 million if anyone can prove that the afterlife is real. And he got thousands and thousands of submissions. And so he started a panel, a scientific medical based panel to evaluate all these submissions. And they chose, I believe it was 28 winners. And
Mm.
Jeffrey Mishlove won the big prize. He won $500,000 and $1.8 million were awarded for these prize winning essays that prove the afterlife is real. And you can get them for free. And so I believe you can get them if you search Bigelow Essay Awards, Bigelow, Bigelow Essay Awards, and
Wow.
there's 28 of these fantastic prize-winning essays. And IONS has a number of people that are involved in IONS that have won. And Jeffrey Mishlove won the first one, and he was the big prize winner. It's fantastic to read all different experiences that validate that the afterlife is real.
I love that. And I'm still learning because the truth be told, right, I was into astrology and meditation and numerology and all this stuff before my NDE.
Mm,
But I didn't really watch or know that much about NDEs until I had one.
sure,
so
sure.
so I'm still learning, you know. I like to jump all the way in, right? I don't want to read about it. I want to experience it. That's how I learn about it.
Which you did. And what I had is not an NDE because I didn't die, but it's
Right.
called a spiritual transformative experience. And Dr. Bruce Grayson, who's one of the premier researchers in
Yeah.
the IONS group, he has developed a Grayson scale of NDE analysis. And there's very many commonalities between those that have had a spiritual transformative experience and those that have had an NDE. So it's very similar.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about that because I think the STE, the spiritual transformative experience, don't you feel because you're the one that's experienced that that came out of the connection and the love to your brother?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was ready. I mean, you need a lot of times you need to be ready in order for that
Right.
to happen. But it changed my life, and it's been fantastic.
Well, I'm so happy, and you are fantastic. So I want you to share in closing, maybe just a little positive message for the collective, and then again, how people can email you and follow you on social media, and maybe even sign up for one of your final legendary Reiki classes.
Eric, thank you so very much. And thank you, listeners. I mean, Eric is fantastic. What a wonderful wealth of knowledge you have to share what's happening with the universe, with your astrology, Big E astrology. It's fantastic. Whatever makes you happy. Whatever makes you happy, I encourage you to go forth and share love with yourself, share love with others. Believe that we are here to achieve our soul's purpose. And you can find that soul's purpose by doing what your heart wants. Find something that makes your heart sing, and you'll find great joy in life. And you're welcome to keep connecting with me. My book is a good way to do it. Changemaker, How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. You can, of course, get it on Amazon and bookstores and all that jazz. My email is Becky at RebeccaAustillClausen.com, and I'm sure Eric will have that someplace.
Oh, yeah. So
no hyphen, no space, just RebeccaAustillClausen.com. And know that you're very loved. Please know that you're very, very loved. And we have a wonderful support team with us on Earth, but they need to be asked, because we have free will here. We have free will on Earth, and our team most of the time does not communicate with us unless we ask. So if you say, hey, I'd love to meet you. I'd love to see you. I'd love to know who is here to assist me on Earth. And so if you ask, it really does help. And before you ask, calm yourself. Take a couple of deep breaths, maybe close your eyes, connect with your heart, and with full mindfulness, ask, and you will receive. And then believe. If you see something that reminds you of a loved one, say thanks. Hey, I love you. Hope you're doing well. It's great to see you. And share that love, because the more you share, the more you receive. And it's a wonderful way to live.
I love that. It's so powerful and so important and so true. And, I just thank you for sharing this inspiring message. And thank you for sharing your gifts and your heart with the collective. And Rebecca, you are a true treasure and a friend. And I love you to pieces. And it was, I just can't wait to continue seeing you and talking to you more in person and all that good stuff. So thank you for joining me today on this podcast, you guys. You guys, please go find this woman. She's a wealth of knowledge. Look at everything down below in the description. And this was another amazing episode of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. All right. Thank you again, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. You're awesome. And so is everyone. Lots of love to you always and forever.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.